I never thought trying to impress someone could be so complicated until I met him. His name was Miguel, though everyone called him Miggy, and he was the kind of Filipino man whose smile could make the sun feel jealous. I was a red-haired, pale-skinned Czech woman in Manila, completely out of my comfort zone, yet somehow drawn to this man whose laugh echoed through the small cafe where he worked. I decided right then and there that I was going to impress him. I mean, how hard could it be? I had traveled thousands of miles, learned a few Tagalog words, and even watched a bunch of Filipino rom-coms for tips. Surely that counted for something. My first attempt was coffee-related. Miggy made the best latte art in the entire city, or at least in that tiny corner cafe. I'd watched him for weeks, seeing how he swirled milk into perfect hearts and flowers. So I decided I would match his skill. I practiced at home watching hours of YouTube tutorials. I imagined the moment. He'd see my cup, raise an impressed eyebrow, and say something witty. So I walked into the cafe, my heart pounding, and ordered a cappuccino. Miggy flashed a quick smile, as if he knew something was up. I sat down, took out my little portable milk frother, and got ready. Everything was going perfectly until I realized I'd forgotten to heat the milk. My cup was just warm water and cold milk, a mixture that would never ever froth. I tried anyway, waving the frother like a magic wand. The milk barely bubbled. When I tried to pour it, I somehow splashed it all over the table, my notebook, and my bag. Miggy leaned over the counter, laughing so hard his apron shook. "Are you okay?" he asked between chuckles. I smiled weakly, pretending this was all part of some grand comedic plan. Of course. "This is avant-garde coffee art," I said, hoping it sounded convincing. He just tilted his head, clearly amused. I wanted to crawl under the table and hide forever, but I wasn't discouraged. My next move would involve language. Filipinos appreciate effort, right? I learned a few romantic Tagalog phrases, practicing them in front of the mirror for days. I was going to say, "Miggy and Ganja Jean Indimo," which I knew meant your smile is beautiful. The next day, I walked up to the counter trying to look casual. "Miggy," I said, "Aing, Ganja something mo?" I panicked mid-phrase, completely forgetting the word for smile. He raised an eyebrow and waited, curious. My face turned red and I switched to plan B. "Your coffee's deliciously tall." I finished, hoping he'd get the message. He laughed, shaking his head. "I think you're trying to compliment me," he said. I nodded vigorously. "Yes." "Complimenting. You smile is good?" I cringed at my own sentence. "I'm still learning," I added quickly. He smiled, which I took as a partial win. "Keep practicing," he said. I wasn't sure if it was encouragement or just mercy. So my next idea was food. Filipinos love food, and I love food. I could win his heart through his stomach. I signed up for a cooking class to learn traditional Filipino dishes. My plan was simple: learn to make something delicious, then casually offer it to him. I imagined him tasting my cooking, his eyes wide with amazement, saying, "You've stolen my heart." In my stomach, the class started well. I chopped garlic, stirred adobo sauce, and even fried lumpia without burning it. Then came the pancit. Noodles seemed simple enough, right? Wrong. My noodle handling skills were not up to standard. By the time I plated it, the pancit looked more like a tangled rope than a delicate dish. I just added a bunch of garnishes, hoping to distract from the chaos. The next morning, I brought my masterpiece to the cafe. I tried to act casual. "I made this for you," I said with a smile. Miggy looked at the container, then back at me. I could see the battle in his eyes, trying to be polite while being mildly terrified. "Thank you," he said cautiously, taking a small forkful. He chewed, smiled faintly, and then discreetly poured a lot of soy sauce over it. I tried not to cry. Not to be defeated, I moved on to physical activity. Filipinos are active, so I decided I would impress him with my basketball skills. I'd seen basketball movies. How hard could it be? I practiced every day for a week, planning to accidentally run into him at the park. I imagined myself sinking a perfect three-pointer as he watched in awe. The moment came. Miggy was jogging with a friend. I dribbled the ball toward the hoop, took a deep breath, and launched it. The ball hit the rim, bounced off, and landed right on my foot. I screamed, hopping around in pain. Miggy came running over, his face full of concern. "Are you okay?" he asked. I tried to act graceful. "Yes, just warming up for my amazing shot," I said. He laughed, shaking his head, and helped me up. I realized then that maybe some things can't be forced, especially not love or basketball skills. Desperate, I turned to music. Filipinos love karaoke. Surely, I could sing my way into his heart. I memorized a romantic OPM song, practiced for hours, and invited him to a karaoke bar. When it was my turn, I grabbed the microphone confidently. Unfortunately, my nerves got the best of me. I hit every wrong note, turning the beautiful love song into something that sounded like a cat in distress. Miggy's friend was laughing so hard he nearly fell off his chair. Miggy's expression was complicated. He was trying not to laugh, but I could tell he was entertained. "You're brave," he said when I finished, patting my shoulder. I wanted to be offended, but instead I just smiled. Maybe bravery counted for something. Finally, I decided to try something different. Instead of trying to impress him, I would just be myself. I started sitting at the cafe regularly, just chatting with him about normal things, asking about his family, and listening to his stories. I stopped with the grand gestures, the bad Tagalog, and the questionable pancit. Slowly, I noticed a change. He began greeting me with a smile that lasted more than a second. He laughed at my jokes, even the bad ones. He started sharing stories about his childhood, his favorite basketball players, and his mom's cooking. One afternoon, we walked along Manila Bay. I made a silly joke about my disastrous cooking class, and he laughed, a warm, genuine laugh that made my heart flutter. I realized then that all my grand attempts to impress him were unnecessary. What mattered was connection, honesty, and just sharing a laugh. When we sat by the water, the sun setting behind us, he took my hand. "You know," he said, "I always knew you were different. But I didn't know you were also crazy enough to make me laugh every day." I laughed nervously. "I thought I had to impress you with skills and cooking." He shook his head, squeezing my hand. "No, you just need to be yourself. Everything else is extra." It struck me how ridiculous I had been, trying so hard to be perfect. And yet, it worked not because of my attempts, but because of my persistence and my willingness to laugh at myself. I had failed hilariously at everything, but in the process, I had become the person he wanted to be around. Months later, we'd joke about my epic fails as the foundation of our relationship. I'd make terrible coffee or sing off key, and he would laugh every time. It became our story, a reminder that love doesn't have to be perfect to be meaningful. It wasn't the latte art or the pancit that mattered. It was the courage to put myself out there, to be vulnerable, and to share my weird, imperfect self with someone else. And somehow, that ended up being more charming than any perfect gesture ever could be. By our first anniversary, we celebrated with a homemade Filipino dinner that I actually managed to cook properly. Miggy winked as he took a bite and said, "See? You finally got it right." But I liked the failures too. I grinned, realizing that the journey, all the mistakes and awkward moments had brought us closer than any perfect plan ever could. And so I learned that in love, sometimes failing hilariously is the best way to win someone's heart. Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like and subscribe for more. See you next time.